December 2004. This is it, folks. It's the last month of the last year in my old 3-ring binder. I'm trying to hold my page here. There we go, with the masking tape label on it. Life-wise, not much going on. Some changes coming up in 2005. In 2004, just cruising along, building picture frames, living next to a police station in North Ridgeville, and reading books. What did I read in December of 2004, you ask? Well, let me tell you. The first book was Digital Night, with a K, Digital Night by Rick E. Spoor. R-Y-K, I assume is pronounced Rick. And in this book, our main character is Jason Wood, and he is a computer programmer and information specialist. So he does a lot of pattern recognition stuff, and he does freelance jobs with computers and things. Like, he's currently working on enhancing some photographs for the police department because there's a guy, like a councilman or somebody, that they think is buying drugs, but they need the pictures enhanced. And he, next door to his place is this woman who is a psychic, and so there's some commotion in the back of his building, and the woman from next door has come by to talk to him, and they hear a commotion. They open the door. This dead homeless guy falls in, and he's got 2 holes on his neck. And Jason Wood asks the cops to keep him informed, and he finds out that the body was drained of blood, and it's not the first one. And then he discovers, as he enhances these pictures, that this councilman, or whoever he is, in one of the pictures, there should be a second person there, but there's not, and it even looks like the guy is going to shake someone's hand, and there's nobody there. And the cops are like, no, he was there, this other dude. Anyway, Jason Wood discovers that there are vampires and werewolves and all sorts of horrific monsters in the world, and he's trying to figure out who's killing people and draining their blood. And he meets a vampire that says he's being framed. So it's that kind of book. And I don't remember too much about it. And I don't know that I've ever read anything by this author again. But it's the kind of book I like. So it would all come down to the writing style. But Digital Night, Rick E. Spoor, is the first book that I read. I followed that up with On Basilisk Station by David Weber. And this is military science fiction. Our main character is Honor Harrington. It's the first in a series, and Honor Harrington is in the space military, and she's pissed off her superiors, so they send her to Basilisk Station, the outskirts, the dregs of human space, essentially. And so she just has to deal. She's got a shitty spaceship that's fallen apart, an apathetic crew, and she has to deal there by this one inhabited planet that's just a shitty planet with shitty people on it, or aliens. And she just has to deal with all this sorts of stuff, and her superiors are still gunning for her. And then there's going to be space battles and stuff, because it is military science fiction. I think I've read more David Weber. I don't know if I've read any more of the Honor Harrington, but they're huge. He's a huge name in military science fiction. And the Honor Harrington series goes on long enough. It must be pretty good. But On Basilisk Station by David Weber. And I followed that with A Hymn Before Battle by John Ringo. This is more military science fiction. And in this one, the first in a series, our main character is Michael O'Shea, and Earth is just, I think it's just modern day Earth, at least modern day at the time that the story came out. And but basically, there's an alien invasion. There's an alien conflict. There's a federation of planets, but we're too shitty a planet to be invited, I guess, at this point in time. But turns out the good aliens need our help, and so they offer us technology and resources and stuff if we'll fight. And so humans get mechs and things, and Michael O'Shea is a military guy, so he's in charge of training. He learns how to use the mechs, and then he has to train troops in how to use the mechs and fight this alien invasion. And again, John Ringo, huge name in military science fiction, apparently an ex-paratrooper, which should lend some authenticity to the battle scenes. But anything with mechs, I'm usually on board. Again, it's going to come down to the writing for something like this, because all the pieces are in place. And again, I think I've read more John Ringo, so must be good enough to read more. A Hymn Before Battle, John Ringo. And coincidentally, or maybe not, I don't know, these first three books, Digital Night, On Basilisk Station, and A Hymn Before Battle, all by the same publisher, which is Baen, Baen. I've always pronounced it Baen, but they're huge in military science fiction. That's, I think, their bread and butter. They've done a few other things, possibly only because their military science fiction authors have branched out and done other things, but I can't say that 100%. But all three of these first books, same publisher. But after that, we're still in the science fiction realm. I read Star Hunt by David Gerrold, and this is a prequel to a book titled Voyage of the Star Wolf, and it's about a decrepit old spaceship, not the Star Wolf though, and that's just sort of drifting out in space, waiting to be decommissioned, I suppose. All the people on board waiting to be assigned somewhere else. But the first officer thinks that he has seen something on the radar. He thinks he's seen an enemy on the radar, and he believes they should pursue this enemy and try to destroy them. First of all, David Gerrold, best known for writing the incredibly popular Star Trek episode, original series episode, The Trouble with Tribbles. And he's also the writer of the book The Martian Child, which was made into a movie. But big science fiction writer. And if I'm not mistaken, this is a book that I read because I had read something David Gerrold wrote talking about the inaccuracy of space battles in science fiction. And he was writing something that was going to be more realistic. I think it's this book. But basically, he was talking about the speeds that these ships are traveling. You're not going to have these dog fights, these things. What you basically would have is these ships are traveling so fast that as they pass each other, they basically have one shot, and then they're completely out of range. And it's days before they're able to turn around, maneuver, and come back at each other. So there's these battles, instead of these fast, flashy battles that we normally see, they're actually incredibly slow battles with one shot every however many days, which was a really interesting concept. And as I said, I'm like 75% sure this is the book. And then it was David Gerrold that talked about that. I follow him on Facebook. Always interested to hear what he has to say. I think he's still putting stuff out. He had something out within the last few years, something new. But Star Hunt by David Gerrold. There you go. All right, now we're getting away from the science fiction, at least for a little bit. Blood-Sucking Fiends by Christopher Moore. I believe this was his third published book. And This is a vampire book. You might tell from the title. Our main character, excuse me, our first main character is Jody, a young woman who one day, evening, some point within 24 hours, wakes up in a dumpster. Her arm is burned, and she has a thirst for blood. So she's been turned into a vampire. Someone turned her into a vampire. Our other main character is C. Thomas Flood, who wants to be the next Jack Kerouac, I think is what it says in the description. But he's working the night shift, the overnight shift, stocking shelves in a supermarket or something. And he and his buddies, they have frozen turkey bowling that they do while they're there. Jody stumbles in. Jody and C. Thomas start a romance. Meanwhile, bloodless corpses are popping up all over the place. And so Jody, C. Thomas Flood, and his turkey bowling co-workers, frozen turkey bowling co-workers, are trying to figure out who is committing these murders. It's lighthearted Christopher Moore vampire story. Enjoyable. Not my favorite, not the worst. It's enjoyable. It's very light if you're just looking for something light to read. Blood-Sucking Fiends by Christopher Moore. Then we have Beyond Verulan by S.L. Vale. Again, don't know how you say her name. This is the second book. I think it's the second one. Would make sense. In the Star Doc series. So our main character is Dr. Chariho. Pardon my pronunciation. And there's a revelation in the first book that I'm not going to reveal, but it causes problems for our good doctor in this book. There are people after her now because of this thing that is revealed in the first book. So she's trying to do her job as a doctor on the outskirts of space, treating all of these different alien races while also trying to survive sort of being hunted, being chased, being persecuted for this thing that was revealed. And I mean, I must have liked the first one, which was on last week's video. The video before that? No, last week's, right there. What am I looking at? Yes, it was in last week's video. So I read the first book in November of 2004, second book in December of 2004. So, and they've piqued my curiosity. I'm tempted to go back. I wish I had time to reread more, or could prioritize rereading more, because this is a series that's caught my eyeball. But that's Beyond Verulan by S.L. Vale. Then we have Tribulations by J. Michael Straczynski. J. Michael Straczynski, best known as the creator and primary writer of the TV show Babylon 5, also known for one of the most hated Spider-Man storylines ever. But he had a great run on Thor. He's done some great comic book work, and has had some stories in one of the more modern Twilight Zone incarnations and things. Tribulations is the story of Susan Randall. She's an investigative reporter. There is a serial killer in Los Angeles. Susan Randall is trying to figure it out, and she meets up with this mysterious man who's also trying to figure it out, but maybe he's not. Maybe something else is going on. He is a mysterious stranger. J. Michael Straczynski, I think, is a great writer. I have not read that controversial Spider-Man story. His comic book stuff that I have read, I've really enjoyed. And I loved Babylon 5. I thought that was a fantastic show. And I've read some of his other novels and short stories, and I've enjoyed all those. So, Tribulations by J. Michael Straczynski. After that, we have Sad Wind from the Sea by Jack Higgins. Now, this book came out in 1963. It looks like I've written a 3 under the name Harry Patterson, but it's Jack Higgins. Don't know if Jack Higgins is even his real name. And so this is very, very early work from Jack Higgins / Harry Patterson. And our main character is Mark Hagan, who is a gun runner with a shitty boat, just trying to get by. And he one day he fishes this woman out of the sea, saves her life, and she tells him that she knows where there's millions, billions in gold in a scuttled ship. And so, of course, it's a huge score. Who could resist? He's going to go after it. But, of course, there's governments and other people that are all after this money. So it's one of those typical early days Jack Higgins adventure stories. And I dig it. I like Jack Higgins. I like his writing. I like his stories. Sad Wind from the Sea by Jack Higgins. The penultimate book for December 2004, the penultimate book for this 3-ring binder, was Transformers Legends, edited by David Cian, Cian. Transformers Legends. It's an anthology. I think there's 12 or 15 stories in here. Authors like Tim Wagoner, David Bischoff, a bunch of others. Obviously, at least 12, possibly 15. And it is what it says on the tin. It's a bunch of Transformers stories, ranging from the Dinobots to just all the different incarnations of the Transformers. If you're a Transformers fan, I think it's the kind of thing you're going to enjoy. And finally, the last book that I read in December of 2004, the last book listed in my 3-ring binder, Blood Rights by Jim Butcher. This is the 6th book in the Dresden Files, and Harry Dresden, our local private eye wizard in Chicago, is on the set of an adult film because the director thinks he's cursed, but the starlets are the ones who are dying. And Harry Dresden is there because he has this friend who's a vampire who is somehow attached to this adult film production and asked Harry Dresden to look into it. It's not going to be simple. There's going to be some weird stuff involved in this case because it's wizards and vampires and fairies and all sorts of crazy things in Chicago. It's almost a dead detective society. So this is, again, the 6th book in the Dresden Files. I'm assuming, I know I read some before this. I'm assuming I've read them in order and didn't skip any. So I've read at least 6 in the series. I know I haven't read even half of what there is. This could be the last one I read. I don't know. We'll find out together. But again, another series that I'd like to go back, start from the beginning, and read and see how I feel about it. But again, so many unread books. Rereading stuff isn't a priority. Blood Rights, Jim Butcher. Question for this video: are you a fan of the Transformers? Very simple question. All sorts of permutations to it. Are you a fan of the toys? Are you a fan of the movies or the cartoon or the comic books? For me, I was mainly a fan of the comic books, the original Marvel comic books, and they're finally being reprinted, and I'll be able to get my hands on a nice fat volume of the old Transformers stuff. Watched the cartoon some, but was more a fan of the comics. And I had a couple of the toys Wasn't a huge collector. I just thought some of them were kind of cool. You know, you got to transform them. That was fun. And as far as the movies go, technically I've seen two. I watched the first one. I'm talking about the Michael Bay verse. I watched the first one. I thought it was absolutely horrible. It was really cool for a second when you see Optimus Prime on screen or Bumblebee on screen or all the rest of them. Who cares? Because they didn't look that great. And the story is terrible. When they fight, if you haven't seen it, when they fight, it just looks like two balls of tinfoil or a ball of tinfoil rolling around. It's just terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. So I didn't watch any others until Bumblebee. Bumblebee, I think, is really good. The Transformers look like the Transformers. It's a much more simple story. When they fight the way they did in the cartoon. And I like the cast. I like the characters. I think Bumblebee is a movie worth watching. Someday, I'm going to pick it up on Blu-ray. It's not a priority. It's not like the greatest movie I've ever seen. I got to have it right now. If I stumble across it at the Exchange or something, I'll pick it up. I wouldn't mind rewatching it at all. And I'd like to watch, if there's special features, I'd like to watch those. Bumblebee, really enjoy that movie. Haven't bothered with any other movies after the first one. Not going to bother with any other movies unless they go back to the Bumblebee style. So not a fan of the movies overall. Enjoyed the old comics. I hear IDW's run is fantastic. So I may check that out at some point. But that's my Transformers. What about you? Or do you not even care? Let me know in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. Try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. All the usual YouTube stuff. If you'd care to follow me on other social media, I'll have links for my Instagram and Bluesky in the description below. That's all I've got for you this week. So until next week, and a brand new notebook, read more books.